wicked cousin of Shakyamuni. And you begin to relate him to your life. You begin to understand what purity really means, because you see it living in Nichiren Daishonin's life and actions. And furthermore, when you begin to teach others about Buddhism, what we call shakabuku, and when through that you're, as it were, compelled to get involved with another person's life, to feel their sufferings, to share them with them, to understand how their lives are made up, you also learn a great deal about your own life. And you can relate those experiences to the teachings of Nichiren Daishonin, which were all in the end aimed to help us to overcome those sufferings. So perhaps I'm beginning to make it clear that the more you look at the Gohonzon, the more you concentrate your mind on it, the more it begins to live. At the same time, of course, you're also becoming more and more perceptive about yourself. This is inevitable, because as you look at this Gohonzon, you are seeing the qualities of life, and especially of life in the Buddha state. Therefore, it's a perfectly natural thing that you'll compare that with the state of life which you're in at the moment you're looking at that Gohonzon, or the state of life that you're in day by day. And inevitably, therefore, you begin to see the gaps and differences between what is represented there on the Gohonzon and what is the actuality of your life today or tomorrow or the next day. And since the more you understand the Gohonzon, the more you admire the qualities which are contained on it, therefore again, perfectly naturally, you will desire to develop those same qualities in your own life, and thus close the gaps and differences between your state of life now and the state of life in the Buddha state, which is on the Gohonzon. So this is an extraordinary thing, and it's extremely difficult to understand. But the fact is that it works. Not one of us who practiced would go on practicing unless we constantly got actual proof that it works. So you may say, hold on a moment, I'm chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo without a Gohonzon and I'm getting benefits. And that's perfectly right and reasonable. You might also say, therefore, why must I have a Gohonzon? If I'm getting benefits, isn't that good enough? But the answer to that is, yes, you do need a Gohonzon. Not because I'm saying so, but because the Buddha, in all his wisdom, said we need the Gohonzon. Because although it's true, through propelling your prayers, your determinations in your desires, out from your life and also back into your life through chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and through that activation of your Buddha state, combined with your prayers, the Buddha state in your environment will reflect itself, and therefore benefit will begin to come to you. You can't actually make full use of those benefits unless you practice to the Gohonzon. And the reason for that is that you can't change your karma without the Gohonzon. So if you think back on all I've said so far, probably you can see the reason for that. As I said earlier, Nichiren Daishonin inscribed the Gohonzon, and he called it Kanjin no Honzon, the object of devotion for observing one's life. It's only through seeing the gaps and differences between your state of life now and what you know more and more that Gohonzon represents that you discover your unhappy karma. So, of course, some unhappy karma is very easy to see. You can see the surface of it. You may say, well, definitely, my unhappy karma is debt. I'm always in debt. However much I spend, however much I earn, the bank account is always red. This is my karma. I've lived for 20, 30, 40 years, and it's always been the same. And you're right, of course. But why are you always in debt? That's only the surface. What is the deep reason for being in debt? This is what you have to discover, don't you, if you're going to change it. So there's a marvelous person in Japan. His name is Mr. Izumi, and he's a vice president of the Lay Society there. And he's very down to earth in what he says. And one of his famous remarks in that respect is that if your baby has diarrhea, it's no good slapping a plaster on its bottom and thinking you're curing the disease. You've got to get to the root of it, haven't you? So you can moan and say, I've been married 3 times and they've always failed. And that's true, and that's miserable. But what is the cause deep in your life for getting married and divorcing 3 times? What is the cause for being in debt? What is the deep cause for being sick so much? What is the deep cause for always being so angry that you upset everybody wherever you go? What is the deep cause finding it so difficult to come outwards and relate to people? The surface is easy, isn't it? But how do you get to the root of it? And the sad thing is, of course, the truth of the world is that people are slapping bits of plaster on babies' bottoms all over the place, figuratively speaking. So the purpose of this practice is to get to the root of it, to the root cause. And only you can understand that, of course, by getting at the depths of your life, revealing what it is deep down there, which is causing these surface problems to occur over and over and over again. Kanjin no Honzon, the object of devotion for observing your life. On the Gohonzon which you have is life in the Buddha state. By observing your own life, you'll see the differences between the two. The more you go on with that practice, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, once you know your enemy, i.e., what unhappy karma lies in your life, then you can set about overcoming that enemy and changing your life. And of course, Buddhism is so rounded that it gives you a practice which provides you with the strength to be able to do that. So the Gohonzon, as I hope you're now understanding, is vital to one's practice. To change one's karma so that you can reap to the full the good fortune of the benefits that come into your life. Otherwise, those benefits will be wasted. If you do an incredible amount of chanting and you get great benefit and all the things that you wanted happen and your family comes happy and everything, that's no good if you're going to die tomorrow, is it? You have to change that unhappy aspect of the karma. and live the whole of your natural lifespan in order to make full use of the benefits. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is the law of the universe, the creative force that produces all the myriad marvelous things that you can see around you. It's in the very nature of that law to require fullness of life. Life has a purpose from beginning to end. The purpose of that law is to create beautiful, wonderful things which will live a whole lifespan, which is the correct lifespan in the rhythm of that universe, in which to achieve the purpose of that particular phenomenon. And that includes a human being. Why should we be so arrogant as to think it doesn't? We have a natural lifespan which we should live. And not only live it, but live it to the full. Then every single one of us can achieve our true purpose in life. If we have our life shortened through accident or sickness, or even loneliness or sadness, we are failing to fulfill our purpose. In some way it's chopped off, and the world becomes an unhappier place because of it. So probably it's now apparent to you that really, speaking very generally, the Gohonzon has two functions, mainly. One of its functions is to enable you to observe your life like a mirror. And the other function of the Gohonzon is to act as the link, not only between the physical you that is speaking those words, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and the unseen you that exists in your life, but also to act as the link between your life and its unseen state and the unseen state in life all around you. In other words, you physically chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to the Gohonzon, and you spiritually determined to take a great deal of action to change yourself and your circumstances. This reflects, of course, deep in your life, and through the practice which activates the Buddha state, that then reflects itself out into your environment. So it's very easy, as I said last week, to see that an angry man reflects the state of his life to everybody in whom he contacts during the day. An angry man can make a whole office or a whole schoolroom miserable, perhaps even frightened. But though it's not so obvious, the man in the Buddha state or the woman in the Buddha state can do the same thing, reflecting the Buddha state in everybody. It's very difficult to see because it reveals itself in so many different ways that are very difficult to see or understand. It reveals itself perhaps in some sort of a radiance, in some sort of a wisdom in what the person says, in some sort of a kindness, or an ability to listen, or whatever. But in one way or another, that Buddha state and all its qualities will reflect itself into everything in the environment. So that is the second function of the Gohonzon. The first, to show you yourself so that you can change your karma. And the second, to act as the prime point, the focal point of your highest quality of life, which in its turn reflects itself into all of life that exists around you. So when Nichiren Daishonin was talking about the practice, he said words to the effect that the moment that you sit in front of the Gohonzon and chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you are in the Buddha state. It's very difficult to see or feel it or realize. You may feel positively irritable sometimes when you sit down in front of the Gohonzon. The last thing on earth you want to do may be to chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. But the fact is that you couldn't even get yourself down, sitting or kneeling in front of that Gohonzon and chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, unless you were in the Buddha state. So you remember last week I explained that those 10 basic states of life each contain the 10 basic states. If Buddha was here and hell was there, and there was nothing joining those two, Buddha would be superhuman. But Buddha contains hell, and hell contains Buddha. Buddha is a human being. So therefore, often you don't feel you're in the Buddha state. But gradually you realize through the practice that what Nichiren Daishonin said is true, because you discover that you are getting glimpses of wisdom you never thought you possessed, of compassion you never believed you could release in certain circumstances, of courage that certainly wasn't there before, and so on through the great qualities of the Buddha state. So you are in the Buddha state when you practice, and this is why the benefits come, reflecting back from your environment. So I'd like to read you one passage from Nichiren Daishonin's writings in which he talks about this matter. It's from a Gosho which is called On Attaining Buddhahood. It is the same with a Buddha and a common mortal. While deluded, one is called a common mortal. But once enlightened, he is called a Buddha. Even a tarnished mirror will shine like a jewel if it is polished. A mind which presently is clouded by illusions, originating from the innate darkness of life, is like a tarnished mirror. But once it is polished, it will become clear, reflecting the enlightenment of immutable truth. Arouse deep faith and polish your mirror night and day. How should you polish it? Only by chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So our practice to the Gohonzon is polishing that mirror. Perhaps this is the most wonderful way of explaining it, isn't it? Far better than all the words I've used this evening. But through polishing that mirror, through your practice, day in and day out, so you reveal the jewel which is in everybody's life, yet they know it not. And that is the Buddha state. This is the purpose of the Gohonzon, to act as a mirror. And of course, most important of all, the purpose of the Gohonzon that Nichiren Daishonin described is only to reveal the Gohonzon that exists in you. In other words, what Nichiren Daishonin inscribed has no power in itself. The power actually exists in you. In other words, it's not a magic charm. It's not something from outer space. It's something incredibly valuable, an unbelievable treasure, the fruits of the wisdom of all the Buddhas, which in its amazing way enables you to draw forth the Buddha state in your life through your effort. So, of course, to be able to inscribe a Gohonzon, you would have to be a Buddha. If those Chinese characters revealed anger or impatience or greed, that would reflect also in us. In that sense, the Gohonzon has power. But actually, it's drawing the power out of oneself. So in many, many Gosho, Nichiren Daishonin spoke most strictly about this point. If you believe the Gohonzon is anywhere outside of yourself, he said, you are not practicing this Buddhism. So, of course, this is quite a difficult concept to understand. But gradually, one's mind adjusts to it as you practice. And furthermore, you begin to see the results, so you know that really it is drawing something of a quality previously unimaginable out of your own life. So the Gohonzon becomes in this way the prime point of your life. Every morning, every evening, sometimes more if you wish to, you feel more and more of a desire to come back to that prime point, to that absolute, constant, unchanging prime point. The only thing in this incredible world we live in which is totally constant, totally unchanging, however long you look at it, for a whole lifetime. You bring yourself back to that. Furthermore, this can be developed onto a social scale. In our center at Richmond, which we've not long opened, last May, we have a Gohonzon for the United Kingdom, for the peace and prosperity and happiness of this country. So all of us who are practicing every so often go to Richmond and feel we want to just practice a bit to that Gohonzon.